Imagine funding 17 million in your first 8 months in the mortgage business. That's pretty impressive. And today's guest actually did that, Jeff Mudrick. This is actually a repeat of a show that we published back a couple years ago. It's episode 336. But I thought I would put some context on it because on Monday, we're going to show coming out that I think this guy's actually going to beat Jeff's record in terms of production, which is really impressive given that the market's different than it was back in 2022. So a couple of insights from my conversation with Jeff. He shares how in his first 160, it took him 160 days to find his first 10 files. Then it took him 60 days to get his next 10. Now the guy's averaging about 10 a month. And the cool part about this story about Jeff is, so at the time when he started this, he was brand new to mortgages. And he's been able to retire his wife from her full-time teaching job so they can stay home with the kids, which is great. They work together in the business. And he is, as I said, doing about 120 loans a year now and continuing to grow. And so he's one of the guys who went through our Rookie to Rockstar program, a unique program we built for helping rookies find and fund their first 10. Actually, we do more support now, even than when Jeff went through it, help you fund those files. And I just thought this would be an interesting conversation. And we dive into a whole bunch of specifics in terms of tactics and stuff. At one point, I even pretend to do a little role play with him. And, he was good back then. He's even better now. When you talk to him in real life, you're like, man, you've learned a lot in the last couple of years. And I think his total volume funding is close to 100 million in 3 years. And so those results are not, everybody doesn't get those results, but he obviously put the work in and hustled. And he's the kind of guy who just, if you say, hey, go do this, he just does it and does not overthink it, which is always extremely, I find to be a common trait in rapidly successful people. Hey, I'm Scott Beckford. This is the Out of Mortgage Brokering Podcast. Excited to have you listen. And I've been doing this for almost over 10 years now, talking to smart mortgage brokers, trying to figure out what they're doing so you can copy your mortgage business. And I'm always learning. I've never feel like I've got this all figured out. But I've been doing it a long time. And I look for things that you can hopefully copy and paste into your business. Before I jump into this conversation with Jeff, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ownwell. So Ownwell, this is for our Canadian listeners, ownwell.ca. It's a really cool tool. If you go to ownwell.ca/Scott, you can actually get access to it. And it basically copies a tool called HomeBot, which is a tool that in the US is very popular with mortgage brokers and loan officers. And it allows homeowners to monitor their home equity as well as their buying power on a monthly basis. And when I interviewed the CEO many, many moons ago, I was like, is this coming to Canada? And he's like, no, I don't think so. And they never did. And so now there's a company that's actually doing it, which is fantastic. So I would check that tool out. It is a powerful way for you to engage your clients and for them to manage their home equity, and you being a big part of that whole conversation. All right, let's have this conversation with Jeff, and then I'll wrap up with a little outro. Hey, Jeff, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me again, Scott.
So, hey, I'd love to do an update show with you. We chatted a while ago, and I know your business is going crazy, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes here. But so how long have you been in the mortgage business? Let's do a quick recap. Anybody wants to listen to the previous episode we did, they can go do that. But how long have you been in the mortgage business up to this point?
So I got my official license end of April 2021. And then I was kind of part-time until I joined the brokerage in August. And then I, decided, wow, I need to jump into this full-time. So I became full-time the middle of September of 2021.
Right. So you joined the brokerage in August, started going through the training, realized, okay, this is going to be a full-time commitment, left your day job. Did you have any uncertainty about leaving that day job?
I did, definitely. Yeah. Well, my wife did too. But it was scary. I had a few files that were scheduled to close at the end of September. So about a month after I left my job, each file I got at closing, I was like, okay, this takes me till the middle of October. Now this takes me to the beginning of December. And then I stopped doing that pretty quickly because deals started coming in.
Okay, so give me an update then, because the way we kind of run this through, the goal is to get your first 10 deals. How long did it take? Do you remember how many days that took?
Yeah, big numbers, nerd. So it took me 160 days to get my first 10 deals.
And so when did that happen, from August 1st to when?
January 14th was my 10th deal funded with the brokerage. Yeah. And then since then, now I've just funded my 21st deal. Right. So another 10 and 60.
It speeds up, right? It's exponential. So the first 10 are always the hardest, but then now you've done 10 in 60 days. You'll eventually be doing 10 in a month. So what have you funded year to date? So this is now January, February, March, in the first 3 months of this year.
So I'm at 10.4 million funded in 2022.
And then we were chatting earlier, what does your April look like?
So April is going to be the busiest month I have, and I have 7.7 in the pipeline
And how many files is that?
In April, there are 8 files or 9 files in April.
So that's almost, so there you go. You went from 160 days to 10 files to 30 days, 9 files. Yeah. So crazy. So I'm going to back up a little bit and walk me through what were the kind of the key steps that were able to help you get there that quick? What kind of the things, if you think about like kind of key things that helped you be able to do this?
The first was support, kind of knowing where to spend my time. I talked about this on the other podcast, but before I was full-time, before I joined the brokerage, I was trying to post frequently on social media, trying to get business that way, and realized there's a lot easier way to get business, and it's through referral partners. So I spent, a lot of time building up my referral partners. So I work primarily with realtors and, perfecting kind of my pitch to them as to why they should work with me, working on my value adds, and really just following up with them on a weekly, biweekly, monthly basis to make sure that my name sticks in their head.
Right. We'll talk about this, the follow-up piece that a lot of people miss in a second here. But so the way we sort of outline this is, hey, we show you how to build a list of real estate agents, right? Which you did, and use your network and all the different little strategies. Then you build a presentation to show how you're going to add value. How many presentations did you do and in what time period? So first question, how big was that initial list? And then how many presentations did you do in what time period?
Well, I still have a list. I think I have 150 realtors I have not contacted. But the initial list was around 200 realtors. I called 50 realtors, presented to 40 of them over 30 days or 42 realtors in 30 days. Then I've kind of stopped. And right now, what I've actually been doing is when realtors reach out to me, they'll reach out to me to kind of connect to do business. And then I'll wow them with that presentation. So it's kind of a nice...
It's more like a magnet now, starts to suck people in. So, and then how long did it take for you to start to see results from that? So like when you followed that formula, how long did that take?
Yeah. So initially, after my first kind of few presentations I didn't really hear anything, wasn't getting like initial leads off the bat. But again, I attribute it to the follow-up. It took about kind of 3 to 4 weeks for kind of each realtor who I presented to see that I practice what I preach. So I am communicating with them, weekly, if not every couple of weeks, or if not multiple times a week. So it took about a month, 3 weeks to a month for people to start sending me deals. And once they sent me one and kind of got to see the process that we implement, then they're converted and it's a nice...
And now they become a client. Okay. So from the 38 or 42 that you, how many of them are actually now, like, would you say are consistent referral partners? Because just as a side, you have no time to go out and find new, like 7.5 million or whatever. You still don't have an assistant, which you're going to need. But how many of the people that you presented to are actually actively referring you?
So I've had 13 realtors refer me deals. And of those 13, actively, I have 6 who are kind of like my superhero realtors who are, successful in the industry. And anytime.
So literally 6 realtors are enough to basically change your whole, life in terms of volume in business. And now it's just hold on and deliver a good customer experience.
Yeah, that's been the challenge now, is just to make sure that those realtors sent me their first clients and they got that amazing customer experience. The goal is to make sure that all the clients they send to me are going to have that exact same experience.
So what is your biggest challenge right now then, do you think? What's the thing that's like keeping you, up at night or stressing you out?
Well, the first thing is time. I wish there was more time in the day. It is making sure that, as I kind of mentioned, just delivering that high quality experience to make not only the clients very, satisfied with their service and want to refer their family and friends. But since day one, I've always thought my clients are my realtor partners. So they're the people who I want to service the highest quality that I can. So when they have a question, when they need something immediate, I'm there for them. And it's just making sure that I kind of keep those realtors happy and keep them feeling like I need to send my clients to Jeff. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I had another coach, Lori, reach out and said, "Hey, Jeff, like we were just having a conversation." And she asked me the question of, what would you do today if you got 10 new leads? And my answer was, I would be in trouble. Like it's scary. Yeah. And she's like, well, I think it's time to, as you kind of mentioned, I think it's time to get some help. So I think kind of going along the same lines that you mentioned, the assistant part would be fantastic to probably do some of the fulfillment portions of the business.
Right. Yeah. Give you a bit of your time back. What does your wife think about sort of this new career? Because this was not something that, you don't have a family who's in real estate. You didn't have any of some of those, advantages, but what does she think of it?
She loves parts of it, and other parts I'm working on. So this orange office that I'm in here a lot. So it would be nice to kind of structure my time a little bit better, which I honestly think has been a huge improvement over the past 2 months. For the first 6 or 5 months, I was literally in here for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, nonstop. So she loves the fact that now over the past 2 months, I'm starting to do things I enjoy again. Scott, I went snowboarding the other day. I played hockey in the middle of the week last week. It was nice. I'm taking some time to myself. But obviously the financial part is incredible. As I mentioned to you earlier, we get paid like surgeons with not having to do the 15, 20 years.
15 years of school. Yeah. Right. I always say it with less training than a hairstylist. No offense to hairstylists that are listening at the moment. But okay, so at the end of April, you're going to be at 17 million. That's in 4 months. Where do you think you're going to end up this year? Any ideas? Oh,
that's a great question. I'm not sure. So it's part of the brokerage training. You asked us initially when we joined to kind of create a goal of what we want to do for the year, long-term goals, short-term goals, and how we're going to achieve them. So my initial goal was to do 10 million in my first year. So obviously I need to adjust that. The number where I want to adjust it to, I'm not sure. So I'll be at 17 million in 4 months. Is that going to be sustainable over the year? Maybe with some help.
For sure. We need to, that's for sure that priority is getting you even a part-time assistant and so that you can get some of your time back and do some of the things like hockey and family stuff.
That's the plan. So I'm not sure, kind of at the end of February, I was hoping to do around 35 million in 2022. But again, because April's going to be quite busy, I'm going to be halfway there in the first 4 months. So,
right. We'll see. I guess we'll check in with you and see how that goes. So in terms of looking back now, if you could go back and give yourself some advice, what kind of advice would you give yourself? If you're brand new in your time travel, what would you tell yourself?
I would say 1, find a brokerage or mentor that supports you, and not only in the underwriting part, but in the sales and getting business as well. But I'm pretty happy with the decisions I made to join the brokerage who offered me exactly that. The reason I joined the brokerage initially was to focus on the sales, and the underwriting was kind of just a big bonus for me. So I would say find a brokerage that you work with. If I'm talking to myself 6 months ago, which again doesn't seem like that long ago, it would be to time block more effectively, to not answer my phone every time it rings because I'm afraid I'm going to lose business. Let calls go to voicemail because, when clients are calling you and it's a referral from a realtor, from my experience so far, they're not just jumping to the next person on the list. You are that referral for a reason. And typically the client will say, hey, I was referred to you by X realtor and they said this about you. So, yeah.
Okay. So there's a couple of things that I want to touch on as well. So we were talking about the importance of doing more hard work on the front end so that it makes it easier. So what have you learned about that? So talk to me about that experience.
Sure. So in 2022, out of the 20, or I don't know how many files. Anyways, I've had 2 big files that I kind of did some underwriting on back in December. They purchased in January and the closing was one in February, one in March. And it was chaos. And it was because I learned the lesson the hard way to collect every single piece of document up front, make it hard on the client up front. And I kind of have a script to say, hey, we're doing all this work on the front end to ensure that we know exactly to the penny what you can afford. And so I'm not going to ask you for documents down the road because we're doing it all right now. And here's why it's beneficial to you. So, asking for documents up front is something, again, I learned the hard way. We got the deals done, but it was not worth the stress that the sleepless nights.
How much time do you think you put into those files, compared to, because you didn't do the extra kind of front end stuff?
Well, I would say hours actively working on the file was probably at least 5 times what files that I work on now is, but the times thinking about the files are.
And then the anxiety, the emotional load of thinking about the stress. Is this going to get sorted? Is it not? Dealing with challenging conversations
for sure. And it's just managing client expectations as well. So when, for those files, when I had to go back 8 times to say, hey, I actually need this, I actually need that, I need this, I need that. It's a lot for a client to hear, especially one of them is a first-time home buyer. And it doesn't make the experience, referable, which is really my goal throughout all of this. Luckily, the clients are good sports. They're getting some really nice closing gifts. as a way to say kind of thank you and congrats. But
I have found that sometimes you have files that literally I've said they're like falling downstairs and you climb up to the top and fall down them again. And then 3 years later, the client calls you up and is like, hey, how's it going, Scott? I'm like, how are you calling me after the mess? But, they will forget sometimes anyway.
Well, you know what? Like even throughout, my goal is to maintain that client relationship. So yeah, as much of a kind of a crapshoot as, the one that's closing today actually was, we laugh about it. So like the client, she texted me and she's like, hey, like, who do you think is more stressed on this file, you or me? I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good, that's a pretty good what's going on. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say I'm a client and I'm talking to you, I get referred and you're like, hey, Scott, I need this stuff. And I go, can't you just give me my numbers without it? What would you say to me? So pretend I'm the client who kind of wants to not.
Yeah, Scott, I can fully understand why you want the numbers without having to send me all this kind of personal confidential information. From experience, it's kind of like if you go to a mechanic and say, hey, what's wrong with my car? But you don't let them open up the hood. So really, in order for me to give you that accurate number down to the penny, I'm going to need to see X, Y, and Z. And here's a way I can make it simpler for you. So I have access to certain technologies, like I'll kind of throw like a Snap NOA in there. Say, hey, I can pull this all for you so you don't have to dive into it. We use bank statement program as well if client's really struggling. So, I have access to a ton of technology that I'm able to do all the work on my end. So here's what I need from you, and here's why I need it. And I'll kind of just continue to go in there.
Right.
And then I'll say
it's always about presenting things in the benefit for them. Like if you tell me the benefits for me, as the customer is what you're doing right there, then okay, I get it. And the few people that don't want to comply, you're probably dodging a nightmare anyway, right?
Yeah, that's what I've done too. So sometimes clients, I'll send them a link to an application. They'll fill out literally their name and birthday, and they'll send it back and say, hey, I completed the application. So, with these clients, I have a different approach to take. But again, it's my time I find right now is very valuable, and I don't want to, spend it in the wrong areas. I don't want to focus my attention in the wrong areas.
Okay. I'm going to come back to the technology bit there in a sec. So you had touched on follow-up. So get the presentation. How much do you think the follow-ups that you've put in place with the people that you've presented to have made a difference in your business?
That is my business, my business is in follow-up. Many, the majority of the leads I got is because I followed up, and I know that to be the case. So for example, I think of it like this. You can have the Mona Lisa of first dates with the realtor or whoever your referral partner is. They can love you off the hop, just like a date can. But if you're not following up, if you're not texting them after the date to say you had a great time, they're going to forget about you, and another mortgage broker or another mortgage agent is going to come on board and wow them as well. So that's kind of my mindset has been. So I'm very consistent with my follow-up. As I mentioned earlier, my clients are my realtors. So if I'm not following up with them on at least a weekly basis, then something's up.
Yeah. So too many people, they think they're being a nuisance, but I actually think you're showing how you say I have good communication, but then you don't communicate. It's like, prove to me, show me that you have good communication by how you communicate with me. So from one of these presentations in September, what's the longest times it took before somebody turned into a referral?
Great question. So I did a presentation it was like end of September with the realtor who I really wanted to work with. I really like her and her daughter. They're a realtor team. Continue to send weekly emails, continue to call every 3 weeks. Whether it's a voicemail or not, I leave a message kind of saying a joke to say something like, hey, realtor, it's been a little while since we connected. I'm going to keep calling. So you let me know when you want me to stop, or I'll kind of say something like that.
Yeah, but you keep it light and fun so that they go, this guy's not going anywhere. Yeah. Like he's literally like, keep going.
So, and then I got a call from a client literally yesterday to say, hey, I was referred you by that realtor. And it was amazing to me because there was zero expectation. The realtor did not let me know. And so it was September to March, however long that is.
So I just did, it was September 30th. It was 181 days.
Yeah.
So 181 days you continue to follow up weekly, and then boom, just out of curiosity, what's the size of that file? What would the...
they're approved at 1.2 for $1.2 million mortgage.
So let's call it $1 million mortgage, right? And
they're approved for a mortgage of 1.2. So
a mortgage of 1.2. So then 181 days, just do the math on what that's worth. And even on the time, all the times that you reached out, did they answer the phone? How often did it go to voicemail? Like,
I've probably spoken to this one realtor 3 times in 6 months, and then the rest are voicemails and the weekly follow-up, weekly email.
Weekly email, but yeah. And so 181 days, 3 conversations, voicemails. Sai did this once. He calculated the value of the voicemails. And like, he was like, yours is probably actually going to be higher if you figure out the math.
Let's see when the client buys and I'll jump back to you.
And then we could be like, how much was the, so it could be like $200 a voicemail or $250. You think about that. If you knew that the voicemails were 200, people would be like, I'll leave voicemails all day. Ka-ching, ka-ching, but we don't think that way, right? We think, oh, I'm going to bother them. And it's like, no, it's all bad thinking. Okay.
Yeah, and the best part for me that I like, the biggest benefit I see is, hey, I just want to work with one client because I know once the realtor sees my process and how I loop them in and the different budgeting spreadsheet and templating that we do and the level of communication that I provide, in my mind, I'm confident to know that this realtor is going to want to continue to send business my way.
Right. You're just like, give me a chance. Give me put me in, like Tom Brady, put me on the field and I am not getting off. Right. That's your psychology. Okay. So I probably should have asked this earlier, but what are you using to try and make the client experience less friction? There's going to be some. I mean, hey, people are getting $1.2 million. They're going to ask a few questions. What are some of the technologies that you use to help make it?
A lot of Snap NOA. Just to easily pull their tax information. Snap NOA has been huge. I use Finmo. So there's a program in Finmo that we can pull bank statements. So if clients are kind of hesitant or sending me...
How often do you use that? Or have you used it like a few times? Or
bank statements?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used it a few times now and it's been amazing because I get what I want on the first try.
Right. And because as you know, down payments, like that stuff could be just such a gong show, right? So... Okay, but aren't clients like, hey, you're going to get my bank account? Like, how do you communicate to them that so if I'm a client and I'm like, hey, Jeff, like, I don't really know. What do you mean I keep sending you the wrong stuff? Or pretend I'm the client. What would you say?
I'll give you the concrete example. So I had a client for down payment docs send me a screenshot of their nothing on their phone. And they're like, hey, you can see like using this chart where my money is right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? I said, hey, that's awesome. Thanks so much for sending. What the lender typically wants to see, or what the lender always wants to see, is your name and account number along with 90-day history. I'll show you what I mean. And I'll pull up a little like dummy example and I'll say, hey, if you click this link, or I'll call them, I'll send you a link. If you click on that, it'll allow me access to pull everything I need. I only pull what I actually need. And I'll show you on that as well. Sometimes we'll do it over Zoom with them so they see exactly what I'm doing. And I'm not diving in anything extra.
Right. You're not like, ooh, I've got your bank account info. So, okay, that's good. And people listening, there are technologies to help, but you do have to communicate that to a client in a way that they understand. Because there is going to be you use Snap for taxes, you use bank statements. Anything else that you found that would be helpful?
Well, I do a lot of checklists. So like document checklists all through G Suite, videos to walk them through all this templating. Those are kind of the big technology pieces that...
And then you use Zoom as well, right? Like you'll jump on calls.
I live on Zoom.
Right. You live on Zoom. Okay. That's fantastic. All right, man. Like it's been awesome to check in with you. You're absolutely crushing it. Let's chat offline about helping you find some help so that you can get some of your bandwidth back. Any last things or anything I should have asked you?
No, I think it's been such an adventure. And again, like 7 months ago or whatever, when I started with the brokerage, I would have never expected to be at $17 million in total mortgage volume in 7 months. And, it's obviously been very, very life-changing and just unbelievable to know that there is a structure that can actually work. There are people out there, you say this all the time. If I don't know how to get business, someone knows how to get business, and it's just finding the people who can find those answers for you can talk to about it. So, the brokerage has been nothing but literally life-changing for me. So I attribute that a lot to...
Well, and you did, at the end of the day, brother, hey, thank you, but you did the work. We have amazing coaches and process, but you still have to do the work. You still got to do the follow-up. You still got to deal with rejection. You got people going, hey, and the realtor you reached out to for 7 months, a lot of people would bail on that. So like, that's on you. That's you continuing. There's a reason you got that $1.2 million deal. So yeah, you're right. I always say there's no problem in your business someone else hasn't already solved. And my coach, Dan Sullivan, says, when you have a problem, ask who, not how, which is, he took my whole idea and condensed it down to like, this is why he's much smarter than me. But it's like, somebody's already figured this out, man. Like, don't struggle through something that someone else has already solved, but then be willing to do the work. At the end of the day, like Jeff has, be willing to be like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to follow the process. And, I'm sure you've had up and down days where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm stressed out. Like,
oh yeah. Stress. The industry, as much as you can make a lot of money, it's, it comes at a cost. It can be stressful. So now it's just about kind of managing my client journey, managing my process to dial it in to make it a little bit less stressful every day.
Right. That's awesome. Well, hey, thanks for chatting, Jeff.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
Hey, thanks again for listening. And hopefully you got some inspiration from my conversation with Jeff. And so a couple things. One, I would check out the next episode that comes out with Nate Atkin, and I talk about how he found 12 million in his pipeline in 100 days. And Nate is a very coachable guy, a fantastic conversation. Go follow him on social. I think the guy is he's going to light it up in the mortgage business, and just really inspiring. I love being around inspiring people and motivated people. Go check that out. And, if you want to find out what we're doing at our mortgage company, you can go to whybricks.com or rookie2rockstar.ca. We've got a webinar there to talk to you. If you're new, if you're an experienced agent, you'd love to chat with us, go to whybricks.com. We'd love to chat with you about maybe how we can help you. And as I always say, there's no problem in your mortgage business that someone else hasn't already solved. Your problem is who's got the answer. Hopefully this podcast provides some of those answers. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.